Hey there, paper geeks and glitter nerds, it's Zen, the crazy geek crafter, and happy card making day, World Card Making Day. Therefore, I made quite the card, and it's not my design. I have to acknowledge and underline that very, very much. It's made by the lovely Sam Calcott. She makes a lot of display cards. She calls them showstoppers, and she's really good. She makes great explanations on how to do things, but everything she does is in inches. And I wanted mine in centimeters, so I had to do a little bit of math to do this, but still the idea and the design is all her, and check out her channel because it's really lovely. But to the card. This card is in 3 pieces, 3 parts, because it took quite a while to make. But here are my calculations on the card that I want to make. I want it to fit a standard European size for the A6. I always forget if it's 5 or 6, but it's 6. And first I'm going to do a few tests. I'm doing that with plain white cardstock here. It's from Gummiapan in Sweden, in Sverige, yes. And I'm using my new scoreboard. I got a bit tired of the old one. But I'm trying to see if I can do this in less than 3 pieces. And that didn't really work. The middle part is too small. I think at the moment my brain isn't working all that well, so I do a lot of testing just to make sure I don't end up doing something very wrong. This is my second try. This could maybe have worked out, but I couldn't see it. So I'm just going to do it in 3 pieces like I planned on the paper. I now feel confident enough to stop using the white paper and move on to the actual pattern paper I want to be using. It's not much of a pattern, but it's a bit distressed, and it has some nice fall colors since this card theme is fall. It's for a big birthday. I'm not going. It's a friend of mine whose grandma is turning 80. But she wanted a over-the-top card. And she's going to get that. I'm still having a bit of trouble with my trimmer. I'm trying to show you here that I use the scoreboard to hold the paper so I don't make any dents in it. I noticed that on the white paper when I was doing it before. So I'm just cleaning it up and making sure I score the right way and which color I want on the inside and which on the outside. And this is a test I made even earlier about how to cut the middle section. I'm just using it as a guide to remember which way to fold it. So here we go with the scoring in the middle. And then I made a spacer that is 3.5 centimeters so that I get an equal border all the way around. And it was really helpful. And I can use it again if I want to make another one of these. But the cost of this strip of cardstock is really worth it with how much easier this gets. Is that eyeballing how far down 3.5 centimeters this is to get the scoring right, it's just not something that's going to happen for me. I'm going to go over the line at some point. Now I just need to cut along the score lines here, top and bottom, and then I can try and fold my piece. I'm still getting used to this ruler. I keep forgetting that it actually has rulers all the way around, so to speak. So I could use that to measure out the 3.5 centimeters I needed to cut. And it looks right, like my test piece here. So that's good. Now I just have to glue these on right. And I can tell you already, I will mess this up royally. But I really didn't want to go buy another piece, so I tried to save it, and I think I did. But here it's pretty straight. It's nice, and something happens after I do this that makes the cardstock slip in, but only on one end. It's like 2 millimeters crooked. And the same thing happens with this piece. About 2 millimeters. It's not more than that. But it's straight here, and then I fold it over and something happens. And now when I close it, it's not right. The inside part is sticking out. So I try to fix it. And that doesn't go very well. This glue sets quite quickly. And it's very stubborn. After the mess I made on one side, I decided I wasn't going to do it on the other one. Even though that one was also a little bit crooked. I tried to rectify it with my bone folder instead. It kind of worked. And this is the biggest mistake I made on this card, and it's really bothering me still. I did try to fix it on both sides, but it's still annoying. But now the basic shape is done. Next up, I am going to make some color cardstock, some radiating colors between a lot of distress colors, and I'm showing them here. We have Frayed Burlap, Vintage Photo Ground Espresso for the browns. We have Seedless Preserves because it's a very red yellow, warm yellow you could say. Fired Brick. I would have preferred aged mahogany, but I don't have that one. There's Forest Moss and Modelon for the greens. We have some antique linen. Carved pumpkin and spiced marmalade for the oranges. I maybe didn't need both of them, but they look very similar on the box, but they're not in real life. There's Fossilized Amber to go with the antique linen. And now I just have to blend them all together. I'm using the same white cardstock as I did for my testing, the Gummiapan paper. It's not made for ink blending, but it worked out fine. You just have to maybe work a little bit harder than you would Bristol paper. I, in hindsight, should have used more greens and yellows than I did. There's too much red and orange going on actually, but I make it work. And now you can see me work. As you see, it turned out quite nice, but I need some sparkle. So I'm taking some Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearl, which I have in this pipette I took out of the, what is it called? The sprayer. I keep it there always mixed with water, so I have it ready to use. And I wanted some splatters, but my ink cubes really need some help. I really didn't get much out of this. This is supposed to be ground espresso, and those are not as brown as I would have liked them to be. I even try again, but yeah, I think I need the re-inkers to do this more efficiently. I can't get enough of the cubes onto the acetate. So I take my re-inker in black. This is the only re-inker I have, and I mix that up instead and make some droplets, and they show up. I am going to try and do some forest moss and some fired brick also, but it wasn't very noticeable. Oh yeah, and don't waste the ink. I just made a panel here for some card someday. Bit more of the perfect pearls for my red color here. If you look really closely, you can see the tiny red, brown, and green dots, but it's not what I wanted. Let's just leave it at that. The panel is for die cutting all the elements that is going on the card. A lot of leaves, that's the word. And this one makes a lot of them. It's a Marianne designs. I have some lawn font from the numbers I'm gonna need later, and this is the Gummiapan I chose to use for my card. And I'm just leaving you the numbers up top, but their full names are listed in the description. Everything is written out to its full extent in the description. I just don't want all that information on my screen. It would make it impossible for you to see what I am doing. I'm cutting down my cardstock here to some more manageable sizes. I luckily can fit everything through my sidekick here, so that will make life a bit easier. And I'm cutting a lot of leaves. I try to fit in the nuts, and this is what is it called? Is it horse chestnut? I think in English. It's the poisonous one, the one you should need. But they're very very characteristic for fall here. We make little animals out of the chestnuts with toothpicks. Yeah, very exciting. But there are some things that can't be red or orange, like the husk of the chestnut. And therefore I am being creative with where I place things. Of course, leaves can be all of the colors I made the paper, but things like nuts and chestnuts and is there anything else? Oh, there are the tiny pumpkins. They also have to be certain colors. If I make them really brown, they wouldn't look right. But enjoyed the die cutting. Not everything I die cut will be made from the colored cardstock I made. I also need some Kraft for these wood rounds. And some of the nuts and things can be cut from this too. Cut down the cardstock to manageable size. And I have checked this can just fit through my sidekick. So I was very, very excited to buy this one for this project because I actually really wanted it. I think it's going to be a good background for many things on cards. But I was a bit disappointed because the lines are not as noticeable as I had hoped. Here I figure I should use my, well, it's a barber brush for the inking, but it didn't take at all. It was really hard to see. I had to do like this, swipe the ink cube to actually be able to get enough on there so I could see the difference. That was a bit annoying. So I figured I would try embossing it first. And I do have embossing plates. I just have to figure out the sandwich because it's really rare that I do this. So I fished them out of my drawer and make the sandwich. Here we go. I was a bit relieved that it went that easy into the machine. So I always felt like when I was doing it on the hand-driven one, it didn't really work that well. It was really hard to squish. Unfortunately, it didn't really work as well as I had hoped. It still doesn't have enough detail, in my opinion. But I'm going to cut it out anyway. Now I have the machine on, I might as well use it. Here it comes. So I don't know if it's a flaw with my die or if they're just not supposed to be very detailed. It's really weird because I was hoping for some really nice detail on them. So I'm picking a Shin hand marker or two to try and color it in to see if I can enhance the lines and things with those. And now compared with the one I ink swipe, it's not good enough. And here I use my alcohol marker on the distress ink, and I can't remember if that's a good idea. But I started, so I also finished it. But I wasn't impressed with the embossing on that die. And I was nice enough to zoom in for you guys, so you could really see my coloring. I just forgot to zoom back out before I went on die cutting. Luckily, most of what I did actually ended up in view of the camera. So I'm just die cutting the branches here and some chestnuts, horse chestnut I think you call it, I'm pretty sure, and some I think the acorns. I can't remember the name of and they're both acorns actually, because the two of them are very big and then there's a tiny branch with two acorns on them. So I cut out the parts where you could really not see what I was doing, so I did leave in a little bit of the process. And I really like these branches. I think maybe if I'm really lucky I can use them for lightning. That could be fun. I think they have the right kind of squiggliness to be lightning. So I'm looking forward to having time and an occasion to try and do that. I have this container, or several containers that I have attached together loosely with a band of cardstock, and it's perfect to hold all these tiny pieces separated so I can still find what I need. Here are my mushrooms, and I decided to just do them plain white and gray. with my alcohol markers. Again, these are done with the Gummiapan paper, so it's not actually made for alcohol coloring, but it doesn't matter with something this tiny. I didn't make too many, and I didn't do the traditional red ones with the white dots on them. I just wanted something a bit more subtle, but that actually turned out to be very bright on my card. So maybe I should have gone with a more grey mushroom. Then I bought these axes of grain, and to me that is really very much fall, and it brings some light to all the dark leaves and the nuts. Same with the mushrooms, but these are a bit more subdued, and I'm just using scattered straw for this one. It's the only color I will use, but it's a bit splotchy, and that gives the grain some texture. I was sure I wanted to use my wood brown, but I was unsure of how many I needed, so I cut quite a few. I was debating whether I was going to use 1 or up to 4 for the card. So I just cut a bunch so they were ready and moving forward. And I also tested out using 2 pieces of cardstock at one time with the die. It was really hard to get through the die cutting machine, and it didn't really help with the embossing, unfortunately. But let's move over to the next episode, shall we?